Now, we are in James chapter 5, verse number 7. Reading from the King James Bible, quote, "Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and latter rain." Unquote. Reading from the ESV, English Standard Version. Quote, "Be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and late rains." Unquote. And again, let's read this in Young's literal translation. Quote, "Be patient, then, brethren, till the presence of the Lord. Lo, the husbandman doth expect the precious fruit of the earth, being patient for it, till he may receive rain early and latter." Unquote. Now, let's look at this in context. This chapter, or actually paragraph, is James 5, 7, and 8. So let's read it. "Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and latter rain. Be ye also patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh." Now, that was in the King James Version. Now let's go ahead and look at this in the Greek. Let's parse this out. Be patient. Now let's look and see, is James used this Greek word any other time? And he has not. It was used one other time by Paul in 1 Thessalonians 5:14. Reading from the King James Bible, quote, "Now we exhort you, brethren, warn them that are unruly, comfort the feeble-minded, support the weak, be patient towards all men." So we pretty well got an idea of what this means, but let's just go ahead and look at the definition of this word, this Greek word, just to make sure we have a full understanding of this. And let's see, we're going to find the verse that this belongs to get the correct one. And here it is. Persevere patiently and bravely, enduring misfortunes and troubles. The genitive of the desired event. So let's go ahead and parse this word out now in the Greek and see how it's being used. The parsing of this shows that it's in the aorist tense, so they're more focused on the actual action of what's going on rather than the time and space of past, present, or future. It's in the active voice, so that means that it represents the subject as the doer, the performer of the action. And it's written in the imperative mood, which is identical to the English imperative, expresses a command to the hearer to perform a certain action by the order and authority of the one commanding. So you're being commanded to be patient. Continuing. "Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming." Now let's look and see how this is used. The Greek word for the coming by James, is it used anyplace else? So we can get an understanding of it. This Greek word is used several times in the New Testament. James uses it 2 times in this paragraph twice. He uses it in this verse, and he also uses it in James 5:8. Remember the second sentence of this paragraph. Reading King James Bible, "Be ye also patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh." So twice he's used this to emphasize the coming of the Lord. Now let's look on further. Peter uses it in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 12. Reading from the King James Bible, quote, "Looking for and hastening unto the coming of the day of God, wherein the heavens, being on fire, shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat." Unquote. And then Paul uses it in several instances. So let's go take a look at one of his. 1 Corinthians 1:7, quote, "So that ye come behind in no gift, waiting for the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. So this word is being used as someone's coming to you, coming. Let's look at the Gospels. It's used 3 times in Matthew. So let's look at Matthew, same chapter, verse 24 is the chapter, and verse 27, 37, and 39. So let's read Matthew 24, verse 37, quote, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be," unquote. And then Luke uses it in Acts 7, verse 52, quote, "Which of the prophets have not your fathers persecuted? And they have slain them which showed before of the coming of the just one, of whom ye have been now the betrayers and murderers," unquote. So we have an idea of what this means now. So let's go ahead and continue on with the parsing. The coming of the Lord. Now this one here, that Greek word for "of the Lord," is used many, many times in the entire Bible, actually. It's very frequent. So let's get a definition of this to see what does it mean. We're going to look at the Strong's Concordance on this one and get an idea. Of the Lord. Supreme in authority, controller, by implication, master. As a respectful title, God, Lord, Master, Sir. That's the Strong's definition of this Greek word that's used many times in the Bible. Of the Lord, continuing, behold. Now let's parse out this word, behold. It's written in the second aorist, so it's identical to first aorist. Focus on what's going on, not regards to past, present, or future. Active voice, so you are the doer. And an imperative mood, which means that you are commanded by the one who has the authority, i.e. Jesus. So behold. Continuing, the husbandman. Now this Greek word for the husbandman is used, 3 times in the Greek New Testament. John 15, verse 1, reading from the King James Bible, quote, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman," unquote. Paul uses it in 2 Timothy 2, verse 6, quote, "The husbandman that laboreth must be first partaker of the fruits," unquote. And then again, James uses it in this verse here, James 5:7. So let's continue on. The husband waiteth. Now let's parse out that word, waiteth. It's written in the present tense, so now, middle or passive deponent form in almost always cases are translated as being in the active voice, so you. An indicative mood to the stating of fact. Let's continue. Behold, the husband waiteth for the precious. Now let's take a look at the Greek word that was used for the precious. And it is only used by James in the Greek New Testament. So we can't get really a grasp of what he's doing with it, except for what we think. So let's get a definition of this. Defining the Greek word for the precious. And in the Strong's Concordance it says valuable, costly, or honored, esteemed, or beloved, dear, honorable, more or most precious, had in reputation. That's Strong's definition of this Greek word. We're going to continue on now. For the precious fruit of the earth. Now let's look at this Greek word for "of the earth." And it is used many times in the King James Bible. So, like over 200. So let's go ahead and get a definition of this to give us a help. And this means of the earth, let's see. Contracted from a primary word soil, by extension a region or the solid part of the whole of the terrene globe, including the occupants in each application, country, earth, ground, land, world. Okay, so it does mean of the earth. So let's continue on. Of the earth, and hath long patience. Now let's parse out this Greek word for "and hath long patience." It's talking about the present tense, so now, active voice, so you're the doer, and the participle mood. So this means that it either has an ing or an ed, so it's being done or it has been done. In this case, "and hath long patience," so that would be an ing. let's continue on, for it until he receive. So let's go ahead and parse that one out. Second aorist, so they're looking at the action of what's going on in that regards to past, present, or future. You're the active voice, so it's you, the subjunctive mood. That means that in most possibilities of potentiality, the action being described may or may not have occurred, depending on the circumstances. So let's see. He receive, continuing, the early and the latter rain. Okay, now let's go ahead and look at John Gill's commentary on the Bible on this. Quote, "Be patient therefore, brethren," unquote. The apostle here addresses himself to the poor who were oppressed by the rich men, and these he calls brethren, by whom he was not ashamed. When he does not bestow this title upon the rich, though professors of the same religion, these poor brethren he advises to be patient under their sufferings, to bear them with patience. Quote, "Unto the coming of the Lord," unquote. Not to destroy Jerusalem, but either at death or at the last judgment, when he will take vengeance on the oppressors and deliver them from all their troubles and put them into the possession of the kingdom and glory to which they are called. Wherefore, in the meanwhile, he would have them be quiet and easy, not to murmur against God, nor seek to take vengeance on men, but leave it to God, to whom it belongs, who will judge his people. Quote, "Behold, the husband waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth," unquote. Ripe fruit, which arises from the seed he sows in the earth, and which may be called precious, because useful both to man and beast. See Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 14. Reading from the King James Bible, quote, "And for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, and for the precious things put forth by the moon," unquote. Continuing, "And between this and the sowing of the seed, it is a considerable time during which the husbandman waits, and this may be an instruction in the present case." Quote, "And hath patience for it until he receive the early and latter rain," unquote. The Jews had seldom rains any more than twice a year. The early, or former rain, was shortly after the Feast of Tabernacles, in the month of October, when the seed was sown in the earth, and if it did not rain, they prayed for it on the 3rd or 7th day of the month, and the latter rain was in March, just before harvest, and to this distinction the passage refers. Now that ends John Gill's commentary of the Bible on James chapter 5, verse 7. Now, let me give some input here. If you have not grown up on a farm and you have not had to harvest grain like wheat, soy, corn, etc., then you have no idea how important the rain can be or how devastating it can be. If your rain comes in the midst of harvest time, it can be very detrimental, especially during their time when they hand reaped the grain. They would be beat down. It'd be almost impossible to pick it up and then cut the sheaves and then take it to get the grain beaten out. A lot of times, if the rain was hard, the grain would already be on the ground, and then you would not be able to harvest it, you would not be able to eat as much, and you would not have much left over to plant the following year. If it didn't rain on time, then your crops either got eaten up by the birds, because they would eat the seeds, or it would bake, and then it wouldn't germinate, and then you would have less crops. So timing of the rain is very, very important. That's why when you read in the Old Testament about God sending the rain during the harvest, it was a curse, not a blessing. So the rain needs to be done at the appropriate time. So that's what they're talking about here. But now remember, this was written for the dispersed Jews that had left, Jerusalem, Israel, and had been dispersed because of the persecution. So James is writing to them who have multiple things going on. They've had to leave their homes, they've had to leave their land, all these things. And so he's talking about being patient unto the coming of the Lord, and to watch for the precious fruit of the earth, and be patient until you receive the rain. And of course, pray for it. So when you're out there and about in your life and you're looking at things, be patient and dependent upon God. Praise God for everything that's going on. Pray to Him and ask for His help. Even when you're looking at things that are normal, like let's say you're a farmer and you need that rain, pray for that rain. If you're living in the city and you're getting ready to go out and about, whether you're driving your car or you're about to take the mass transit transportation, pray that the Lord gives you a safe journey, going where you have to go and back. It works. I had one time where I had prayed for my transportation in a very old used car. For over a year, I did not have a tune-up done, an oil change. Didn't drive that much, but I didn't have it done because I couldn't afford it. It was many years ago. And finally, I took it to my sister's boyfriend, who was what they call a shade tree mechanic, and he worked on my car. And then after he looked at it, he said, "Did you drive this car over here or have it towed?" I said, "I drove it." He said, "That's impossible." He did some stuff and he said, "Okay, start the car." And I didn't start up like normal. Then he did some stuff and he looked and he said, "That's impossible." He did some more stuff. He said, "Start the car." He did that 3 times. Then he called his friends over. They were all talking about something. And then I finally said, "What's going on?" He said, "You're missing a part for your car to start. It needs a rotor to start the car in your carburetor, and it doesn't have that. It creates the spark for your spark plugs, and it doesn't have that," or however it goes. And I said, "Well, I've been driving it. Apparently I've been driving it for over a year without one because I've not had it worked on in over a year." So they put it all back together. He said, "Start the car." I started right up, and they were all shaking their head like, "That's impossible." So he sent me up to go get the rotor, and I went up to the auto parts thinking he was pulling my leg. I told the people what kind of car I had while I was buying the part, and I said, "Do you really need to have this thing for the car to run?" "Yes, it can't run without it." I said, "Well, my car is running without it." He said, "It's impossible." I said, "If you want to go look, you can go pop the carburetor and find out that, it's distributor cap." That was it, distributor cap. And you'll see that it actually is working. As you can tell, I don't know much about cars. And he didn't go look, but I brought the part back over. He put it in my car, and it ran just like it did without it. So he took it out, put it back together, and started up like normal. Put it back in, and it ran. He said, "Well, we're just going to leave it in, even though you obviously don't need it for whatever reason." And I said to him, "You see, it pays to pray. I pray all the time before I take off when I get in my car for a safe journey. And that if it's going to break down, that it breaks down where it needs to be fixed." And it always has. So I still do it. So as you can see, pray for everything that you need. Be patient. Look for the coming of the Lord. And trust in God to take care of you. But you have to ask in prayer. That's it, folks. Thank you for listening to Discovering the Scriptures. May God richly bless you as you go along your way. And we will continue on in this paragraph for James chapter 5, verse 8 in the next recording.